Hey there, by now I'm sure you've heard that a lot of people are saying that lockdowns are coming back. I've decided to make some videos about the subject because I have some things to share that I just haven't heard anybody else saying. Enjoy the videos. It looks like lockdowns are coming back in mid-September, according to Alex Jones. I want to make sure that I give credit where credit is due. Whatever you think of his politics, whatever you think of him, from my experience, he's been very accurate compared to everybody else that I've ever seen. He's got one source in Border Patrol, he's got one source that is above TSA, he says. So Alex's sources are saying that masking for the TSA and for airport employees is coming back in mid-September, and that by mid-October, things will have kicked off to a higher degree. I don't know if that's when everything's gonna be in full effect. And his sources are saying the dates themselves may be flexible, but the lockdowns are not. It's a matter of when, not if. I want to talk about what to expect if lockdowns are coming, why they would be happening now, and what you can do about it. And the what you can do about it part is my favorite. I'm going to tell you what I think the motivation is right now, so that if you don't really want to watch the whole video, you just want the nuts and bolts, I'll just tell you the end. I believe that the lockdowns, the motivation for the lockdowns, is bringing in a CBDC and universal basic income. Maybe this will happen and maybe it won't, but I think it's very smart to take out an insurance policy in the form of small action now to be prepared for what might happen. I'm not really an insurance guy. I'm not the guy who usually says better safe than sorry, but this is one of the situations where I think being prepared can be really helpful, especially if we're not prepared and the lockdowns come. Then maybe even large action won't be able to accomplish what small action can accomplish now, and we may not even be willing to take that large action even if it can accomplish then what small action can accomplish now. That being said, hindsight is not 20/20, but it's certainly better than foresight. And when the lockdowns happened the first time, a lot of us were looking to put the pieces together to figure out why they were locking us down. Well, in hindsight, we still might not be able to say we understand fully the motivations, but what we can say is that we have a pretty good understanding of what actually happened, and from that, we can derive what the motivations probably were. So, what was accomplished through the last lockdowns? Well, obviously, a huge medical rollout. There was a massive increase in government debt. There was a massive increase in government dependence by small businesses, large businesses, citizens, non-citizens. So across the board, there was a huge increase in government dependency. And what came along with that was acclimation to being dependent on the government. So if we were to do that again, it wouldn't feel so weird all of a sudden to get stimulus checks. It wouldn't feel so weird to have a federally bolstered unemployment that lasted over a year, because we've acclimated to being dependent on the government. Something else that happened during the last pandemic is government relationships with all aspects of private society. Doesn't matter if it's for-profit organizations, non-profit organizations, citizens, non-citizens, small businesses, large businesses. The federal government created economic relationships with all aspects. So we're not just talking about dependency, we're not just talking about acclimation, we're talking about relationship. And the reason that's important is because those channels are now available to be used in a, I would say, more efficient way, or even a more complete way. So those are some of the things that we know happened, and I tend to believe that what did happen, it happened intentionally, and that it was a goal. If the key goal was a huge medical rollout, they accomplished that. They didn't get everybody on board, but they got a lot of people on board. So what would it be this time? One of the ways that I came to this conclusion is asking, what changes has the government clearly told us that they want to implement? They've told us that they want to bring in a central bank digital currency. It's basically digital credits in a form of US dollars. So it's digital credits that can be used as money. It is something that the Fed has huge amounts of control over, so they can control our finances and our lives much easier using digital currency than they can using a regular US dollar. And it's money that can be taken away at any time. So the rest of the details, you can go ahead and look that up online. There's plenty to learn. The second thing is universal basic income, which I'll be referring to as UBI. Universal basic income was practiced during the last lockdowns by offering us stimulus money, by bolstering our unemployment checks. UBI is really just unemployment or stimulus checks that never go away. I think these are the two things that are highest on their list of what they want to accomplish this time around. All right, how will the lockdowns help implement a CBDC and UBI? In order to know that, first we have to get into a little bit of context about what's going on in the world and why there is so much pressure on the economic system. Number one, China is struggling. And if China is struggling, then that means trouble is coming our way as well. Second, the moratorium on student loan repayment is coming to an end at the end of this month. And that means that the average person who has a student loan that needs to be serviced is going to be paying $400 a month of money that they have not had to spend in a long time on student loans. And that money does not get circulated back into the economy. This is something else I don't have time to get into right now, but when you pay back a loan to a bank, the money vanishes and is not recreated until the bank decides to recreate that money. So it's not like you're spending money at a coffee shop and that coffee shop is spending money at the barber and the barber is spending money getting his car repaired. It doesn't work like that. The money just goes away. So if the moratorium ends and people are starting to pay an average of $400 a month to service that debt, there's a couple things. Number one, that means they're not servicing other debt possibly. Those credit card payments might not get made. Those car payments might not get made. I think that's going to put people with student loan debt in a position of taking the offer that I will be telling you about that I believe the federal government is going to make. So we've got China, which is a sign of things to come here. We've got student loans. Suddenly the moratorium is ending and people are going to have to start paying on those. We've got exceptionally high credit card usage right now. People are carrying large amounts of debt, maybe the highest ever in US history. Car loan defaults are on the increase. Repos on the rise. A fourth issue is that the commercial real estate market is expected to pop. And that is because there is a lot of commercial real estate loans that are maturing, that the full amount is going to come due very soon in the next 3 years, starting in 2023 through 2025. And most of the time, what's been happening is those loans have been refinanced at low interest rates, but that is not an option this time because interest rates are much higher than they've been. So this is going to mean bankruptcy for a lot of commercial real estate investors. The fifth thing, just for context of what's going on right now, is inflation. There are a lot of people asking the question, how are people getting through this? How are people living their lives? How are they buying homes? How are they still able to afford their cars? Because inflation is getting so out of control that a lot of us don't know how we're going to get through this and what's going to come next. And then the sixth thing I want to mention is Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a halving coming up in 2024, and while I'm not a halving believer, it's a whole different story, I do believe that Bitcoin is going to go up about 10x over the course of the next probably year. I think that's probably a good estimate. And I think that the government wants to get ahead of that with their own currency before Bitcoin proves to be a very good investment. So most of this is to let you know that financial trouble is coming to the United States, and I personally believe that the government needs to cover their tracks so that they don't look so culpable for all of the things that we're about to experience, and that their relationships with big business, the crony capital model that we have in the United States, that it doesn't come under fire. They want something else to come under fire. They want to be able to bury the corruption, the fraud, and the nepotism that is going on between the government and big business to screw over the average American. What can they blame for that? A war, a pandemic, a lockdown. These are great opportunities to bury one's own culpability. So basically what I'm saying is that if you have a building that is about to come down because of faulty design, you can always just set it on fire and blame the fire for the collapse. And I believe that is part of the motivation for the lockdowns that are coming. But I think it's mostly CBDCs and UBI. So let's keep moving on. So I think the lockdowns are to add extra financial pressure to an already difficult situation for Americans that's already going to get worse, in order to break people financially if they don't accept the government's help on the government's terms. So basically they're going to put us in a situation where we are forced to comply or be left behind.